How's the weather in Burbank? Probably really nice and warm.
Yeah,
It's been mostly rainy here the last few weeks, which is good. We always need it. That's the joke that they make out here. We needed this,
Yep.
but we do.
Yeah, you guys are missing out on that big storm, that right? That's more in the northeast part of California.
It is. We get the residual rainfall that comes in as it works its way south. Um, but it's good because I remember there was like 5 or 6 years here where it rained for maybe half an hour for the entire year, and that was it. And you would drive out into the wilderness and see all our reservoirs, and they would be like you can see where the water levels dip and how much it's drained, and it'd be like, oh, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I'm traveling quite a bit to California, and I was in LA like 5, 6 times in the last 5, 6 months, and the weather has been great over there,
yeah,
all the time. So it's good. I think Curtis is still having some problems. Curtis?
yeah. One more time, gonna quit and rejoin. I just changed
Hmm.
out the cable. Hopefully this will fix it.
Sure. What are you working on now?
I'm working for the company. I don't know if you're familiar with the shows Cheer or Last Chance U on
Hmm.
Netflix. I'm doing
Hmm.
a pilot for them at the moment that has NDAs but exists in the same, the same central concept of those shows where teams that we're following, a lot of heart. I think it'll
Okay.
probably, yeah, good.
Good, good.
Let's see.
Cur-
Okay.
There you are.
Here we go. Curtis, what are you working on nowadays?
I'm actually working on it's a bit of a passion project.
Okay.
It's about it's another soccer documentary. Are we saying soccer or
Nice.
football? I naturally say
I
football, but I'm trying to.
I'm okay with football. It's
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a football documentary. So I'm editing and producing it. But it's about this club in Kansas City. Um, that it's a youth football club,
Hmm.
Northeast Kansas City, which is kind of like the underserved area. And the club is made up entirely of refugees. So there's
Ah,
like 27 countries represented in this club. Anyway, so long story short, basically this team they go to the USA Cup, which is the largest youth soccer tournament in the country.
yeah.
Um, and it's kind of a like a 90s style sports feel good type of thing or whatever. But it's really cool, like the kids and everything that have they just have like the most amazing stories and that. So we are currently all self-producing this thing right now, and we will see what happens. And my camera went, God, it went out
That's
again.
okay. That's okay. Just leave it.
Okay.
We'll just
All
replace it
right.
with your picture. Just you're
All
gonna have
right.
to send me a picture of yours. Yeah, no, that sounds great. I know somebody who worked on this documentary. It's called, I think it comes out, it already came out or it's supposed to come. It's called We Dare to Dream. It's about the Olympic refugee Olympic team that took place in 2020, whenever the Olympics was in Japan. Was it 2020? I think. Yeah, so yeah, no, that's cool, man. That's really awesome. Looking forward to that. Refugees is something that I've kind of dealt with too with one of the films that the Citizen Moria was about a refugee filmmaker. So I completely appreciate what you're doing. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the documentary that you guys worked on. Apple TV's Plus's Messi, the World Cup series. How did you guys get on board? Whoever can start first would be great.
I'll go ahead. Because I believe I came on before Carlos. I had worked previously with the showrunner John Henyon. He was the showrunner on the FX show Welcome to Wrexham.
Hmm.
And so he and I worked together on that for a while. Love the guy. And yeah, he was approached with the project and hit me up and asked if I wanted to join. And so I was like, absolutely. I've been a football fan for my whole life. I mean, Messi is obviously the GOAT in my world. And so I was like, any opportunity, if I get to edit Messi's football skills, I'm like, absolutely, I will do whatever it takes to get on that project. So
That's great. How about you, Carlos?
I got on because Matt Renner, the executive producer, one of our executive producers on the show, years ago, he and I had worked together on a show called Game of Arms that followed different arm wrestling teams from around the country.
Hmm.
And it had been a while. He had gone on to amazing new heights since then, producing like Free Solo and other big movies for, I believe, Nat Geo. And he texted me out of the blue in the fall of 2022, like, "Hey, I'm in Qatar. I'm doing this new show." I'm like, it's about the World Cup, and he's sending me videos from like the stadium while they're playing the matches. And he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna make a documentary series about Messi and Team Argentina. Are you interested?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I'm interested." So that,
That's
a
awesome.
few months later became us working on the show for the first time together in over a decade.
Excuse me. That's great. That's good to know. Yeah, I was speaking to what's their name? Was it Juan? Yeah, Juan and Jenna, who are the executive producers. I spoke to them, I think, last week or so about the series and just kind of had a good conversation about, certain aspects and everything. And it was really cool to kind of getting an understanding of, the behind the scene. And my main question to them was like, sometimes you start off on a project gambling on the fact that this team will have a great story, whether or not they will win or not, but they will just have a great story. But it just turned out not only they had a great story, but they won the World Cup, right? Especially after the defeat against Saudi Arabia. I'm not a soccer fan in any means. Like I'll just watch whenever the World Cup comes and maybe watch a game here and there, maybe the final bits and pieces. But I saw David Beckham's Netflix series. I don't know if you have seen that, which is a great 4-part series or 5-part series.
yeah, it's
And
fantastic.
yeah, and I saw this and totally loved it. And just the arc in that entire element, that how they lost to Saudi Arabia and that first in that second half, and that completely defined their journey to winning the World Cup, and how they just kind of struggled every single game to barely get there, including the final. It was just a great story and a great way that you guys were able to, tell that story, at least for you guys in post-production realm of things.
I think we were very fortunate with just how dramatic that whole World Cup was.
Yeah.
From, I mean, even like getting into like the quarterfinals and the finals and everything. It felt like everything was just, it almost felt scripted,
Yeah,
and
that exactly.
yeah, yeah. And I know that there are also people out there like, oh no, it was all rigged or whatever. But no, I definitely wasn't. But it definitely played out like, yeah, like it was meant to be, like the show was meant to exist. It felt like.
Yeah. Carlos, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, same as what Curtis was saying, and to sort of relive it, immersed in the footage and the material that we were able to get to that, eventually comprise the series. You see all these people who are fanatics for the team and the sport and Messi, and after working on it, I was starting to believe a little myself. I was like, maybe I should light some candles, get get involved in all this.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something that you guys said you guys kind of came on board as the World Cup was taking place, right? So do you remember which game it was? Was it literally right at the opening, second round, first round?
Hmm.
Well,
I
we
don't.
didn't start working on the show during it, but we started talks while it was
Yeah.
going. Yeah.
My
I
my
mean,
que The reason I'm
sorry.
asking you, like, sorry about that. The reason I'm asking is like, if you guys have been greenlighted to work on the project, then you're naturally following the World Cup just to not just from the standpoint of watching it as a fan, but because you want to know what's going on, and then rooting for the team that you're actually going to be following. Like, I just want to know where you guys were when everything was sort of greenlighted on your both ends, like which games were taking place that you started following them.
I was there talking with Matt Renner pretty early on, so that by the time the final match happened, I was watching it, going, "Wow, this is you know." I don't know enough about football to know like what the greatest matches of all time were, but I was watching. I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is. I
Yeah.
can't imagine a greater match than the one I'm watching right now. And I was texting with him while the match was going on, and he's sending me like iPhone videos there from the stands as it's all going down. So, I didn't know then that I would be working on the finale episode and getting to cut a lot of that, but was extremely excited when showed up for my first day of work and they're like, "You're on the last episode." Great. but,
That's
but
awesome.
also, but also no pressure, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Curtis, what about you?
I came on or at least was reached out. It would have been January. So it was actually right after the World Cup had taken place. So I think that at that time, I'm sure that like Matt and those guys were already had it in their minds, but then once the World Cup sort of wrapped up, then they're like, all right, let's make a show here. And so yeah, so I mean, I sat with my son in our Argentina jerseys and everything already, and so we were like 100% on board, watched every game of theirs. And but yeah, so it was only after the World Cup that I came on.
All right. Okay, that's pretty cool. And which episodes did you guys edit, or together or separately?
I did episode 3. So I did
Okay.
the Netherlands match, which I was so happy about because when I was watching the World Cup, I was like, this is the greatest match I've seen in such a long time. It was so fun, so dramatic. So yeah, so
Yeah.
I got that one.
And then Carlos, you did the last one, right? Episode 4.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Talk to me about the workflow in terms of, when you guys received all the footage, and obviously, the writers, the directors, the producers are trying to like as a collaboration, like trying to find the certain arcs include and what not to include. And what was that process like? Like, were you guys receiving footage and even interviews as you were cutting, or you had everything at your hand, and the process of each of the episodes that you guys worked on?
I want to say went into production as we went into post production, so we
Hmm.
had some material and started building with what we had, but it became sort of a situation where we would start cutting and say, we need to get this, we need to get an interview with this person, we need this sort of material. And so we were, you know, filming the show as we were also editing it at the same time. And so if you look at the initial cuts that we built out, a lot of them are just slates where like we need someone talking about this thing that happened here. And then we would build that out with, the footage that we had available. And then as that, the interviews came in and archivals came in, we would flesh out, replace the slates with the stuff that we had, which of course, would then go and change a lot of things. So it was this constantly evolving uh, beast of a series that uh, has had many different permutations before arriving where it finally did. Curtis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very collaborative project for sure. Both between post and like the field team, but then also just like within post internally. But yeah, I mean, like I went in, and we had like an initial interview with Messi and a couple of the like historians or
The
the experts.
Argentine generalists.
Yes. But then as we're going, like I'll speak to my episode in particular, there's a few individuals that were very significant in that episode, like specifically Emmy Martinez, Debu, as
Hmm.
he goes by, was like such a pivotal person in that match in particular, with the penalty shootout and whatnot. And so like it was nice because like I really pushed. I was like, hey man, we need to get this guy on camera. Like he is so essential to this specific story. And they worked and they got him in for an interview and really helped. And there's another one, Kun Agüero, who is like one of Messi's best friends. Not when he was not playing it in that match, for medical reasons. He was kind of forced to retire, but he was like present there. And so it was kind of cool, like as the episode, just continually evolved and evolved, and just, version after version. And it just, you see it kind of just morphing into this really interesting thing. Compared to, like, as Carlos was saying, like the very first version of it, that's like half of it is just like blank slate saying like, we need somebody here and that. So yeah, so I mean that process was very cool. You don't always get that luxury with a lot of documentaries or different unscripted shows and things like that. So it's nice to having production like continually be very active in the post process is really helpful.
Right.
Also, a lot of these guys. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, please.
I was going to say, like as far as the interviews are concerned, during the World Cup, none of these guys want to sit down in front of a camera for 2-3 hours and talk about, what they're going through. So, they're very closed off and insular for that. So we don't get to really interact with them in the way that we'd like to while the World Cup is happening. And then after they win it, everyone wants to talk to them. So you have to wait for their schedules to open up from just a logistics standpoint of getting a team out there to interview them. And these guys are all over the world. I think Messi was still in Paris at the time, playing for PSG, and Kun Agüero was in Miami, just all over the world. They disband, and then you got to go and like track them down to get the interviews you need. And so, constant evolution in terms of new stuff comes in that changes everything you're working on and makes it better. But
no, I completely understand. That's a fun in editing a documentary. You're always things are always changing. Things are always, you have a general skeleton of everything, where your start point and your end point is, but the in between stuff is always changing. There's three scenes that are so, like, if I'm thinking about that series right now, three scenes pop out in my mind. I don't know if this scene was in episode 1 or 2. I'm assuming it would be the second one, where when they lost, when they the halftime during Saudi Arabian game, when Saudi Arabian coach, talks to his team saying that, you guys trying to take a selfie with, Messi. I thought that was a great moment in the story of the doc series as well as in Argentina's team, because that turned around everything for Argentina, even though they lost that game. And then the second scene I remember is the episode that you did, Curtis, episode 3, where Messi, I don't know soccer that well or football, but I know that enough to see Messi is like he's like an opposite of Ronaldo, right? Like Messi's like very quiet and serious. He doesn't really show much emotion. And then he lost his temper on the player, the Netherlands player who was trying to like taunt him. That was a very great scene. It just shows his character. And then the complete opposite of that was in episode 4, and I spoke that scene about to the executive producers, Jenna and Juan, is when he's lying down on the airplane seat instead of lying down in business class with his colleagues. Like those three moments are the pivotal moments in the series, and I think in his journey. I mean, as editors, that must have been like gold for you guys, right? Like to receive something like that. Even the most of it, all of it was phone footage, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, all the behind the scenes stuff, is exciting because you get a peek, and I've never been the best in the world at something or been able to hang out with the best to ever do something, so getting to see how they go about their life and their work ethic, and be able to have that sort of material in a project that you're working on is great. And then just, I don't know, from a voyeuristic standpoint, really interesting just to see these guys, uh, and see that, like, I don't know, you mentioned, Messi, he's like a humble guy, to see that it's not like all of a facade and an act, that's how he actually is. And I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Like, again, I've always admired Messi, like as a football player. And, you hear you know, you hear from his teammates and people or whatever, like, oh, he's such a humble guy and he's like, you know, super chill or whatever. And you see that on the field, and, you know, you're, in the back of your head, you're always like, yeah, but is he, you know?
Yeah.
And then to actually see like when he's not, you know, quote unquote performing, and he's just like hanging out with his mates in, you know, their rooms or whatever, and it's like, no, he's just a dude, you know. And it's like it made me just respect him just as a person so much more, just being able to like see that footage, even like his interviews, you know. It's like he is not, um he's not out there to like try to, you know, impress and like make himself. He's even when you ask him like, do you consider yourself the GOAT? Like I've seen interviews and stuff with him where he immediately like deflects the question, and he was like, I have great teammates, whatever. And it's like, man, like that is just true sportsmanship, you know. And it's like, I don't know, like I really admire it with him. And then also like in my episode, for sure, like seeing him kind of like lose his temper a little bit, it was still like there was still this like level of respect, you know. And like he had that phrase, Kimira Bobo, which is a very specific phrase in the region that he was from in Argentina.
Hmm.
That is basically just uh you know, translating it to like calling somebody a dummy. Like it's not even like super insulting, you know, where somebody else might, you know, drop a whole string of, you know, words. But it was, I like, even in that, it was like, oh yeah, you still have like a level of respect for people. And for me, it's like it's really like that quality in him really elevated him to that level of the greatest of all time, because he's not out there trying to prove that he is the greatest. It's like he just he doesn't really have anything to prove. It feels like. And I don't know, it just really makes me respect him, you know. And having two kids that are both, you know, football players as well, I'm like, that's a guy that you can look at as somebody that is a true athlete. Like model your attitude, your the way that you speak, the way that you conduct yourself, model it after somebody like that.
That's a great lesson for your kids. And he is like, you know, not only a great player, whether he's the greatest or not, I mean, doesn't matter. But I think as people like us, like, you know, when we get to a certain age, when we have our kids, you know, when you get older, you kind of realize when you're young too, but you realize more when you're older that how it's not necessarily about being, you know, a champion in terms of winning cups, but it's more about being champion as a person, like how you carry yourself and how you are towards others and stuff. And certainly him and Ronaldo both, and I even think David Beckham again after watching that series, like they're just great human beings, you know, aside from being amazing soccer players.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. Beckham for me, when I was growing up, Beckham was like my Michael Jordan. And so like I loved that whole series because I was like, oh, like I was reliving my childhood watching it. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's like I appreciate, you know, any of these like documentaries and stuff where we get to see like the person as
Yes.
opposed to the athlete, which I think is what we were trying to accomplish with our
Storytelling.
series.
Yeah. Awesome, man. That's great. Carlos, do you want to add something before I go on to the next question?
No, I was just gonna say, if I had any lessons to take away from Messi, it's he's got this way to just block out the noise and just concentrate on what he's trying to do in that one day, and it was real
Yeah.
fun I don't know that it necessarily comes out in the series, but if you just are there in the minutia with the raw material, just watching the rest of the world around him seems like it's, you know, just chaos, and he's just there focused on, you know, no, I'm stretching, no, I'm playing a card game today with my friends, no, I'm just gonna like, you know, get my leg worked on and drink mate and like sing some songs, and he just like has this innate ability to tune out noise and just focus on the task at hand. Um,
Yeah.
So I think there's a lesson to be learned for everyone there. Just focus on what you got to get done.
For sure. Do any of you
Mhm.
guys follow cricket?
I do
I
not.
I used to. So I actually grew up in Southern Africa. And
Mm,
so I was tangentially, kind of around it a lot. Never played it, never really
yeah.
fully got into it. It was always a little too, it took up too much of the day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
The reason, first of all, there's a shorter form of the game now, and one of the World Cups is taking place in the U.S. this year, in U.S. and in West Indies. The reason I asked you is I've grown up with cricket, and when I was watching the Messi series, there was a similar arc that took place in the Cricket World Cup back in 1992. Um, there was a captain who retired after 1987 World Cup from Pakistan's cricket team, and now he was like a prime minister. Now he got into politics, and now he's jailed, but that's a different story. But he retired just like Messi. He was called back. He joined the team, and the World Cup was in Australia. His team was completely eliminated. It had for them to even get into the semis, there had to be six different combination of games that had to go their way, and that all happened. And then they ended up winning the World Cup out of nowhere. And that's exactly the way the way this World Cup was. I found so many similarities, like how every single time there was this like an uphill battle, and out of everybody thought they were done, they were out. And even in the final, when I was watching the final, I thought they were finished, especially after those two goals at the end. The momentum was in the favor of France, right? But again, that perseverance, that never giving up, and he knew that was his last World Cup and he just gave it all and his teams did it for him. And I just thought it was interesting. Like I saw so many similarities in the arc that happened in another sport 40 years ago almost. And the same thing with soccer.
Yeah, that's
And it's
wild.
one of the things that makes sports great, though, is that every once in a
Yeah.
while you get one of these teams that seems just predestined to reach glory and greatness, despite insurmountable odds. Like the Miracle on Ice hockey team from a couple years back, Team Argentina, and cricket, what you're talking about, and now we got to make series about all of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's just so many stories, man. If you're if even if you don't watch cricket, there's a good series on Amazon Prime. It's called The Test. It's about they follow the Australian cricket team for a year. It's and there's scandals that happened during while they were filming and how that the arc kind of turned upside down on its head. Take a look. I mean, even if you don't care for cricket, it's a great little series. It's really
What
great.
was it called again? I'll write
The
that down.
Test.
The Test.
Yeah. I think there's two seasons. I've only seen the first one. And I can tell you that it was great. It was like 7, 8 episodes or something. Um, I would love to talk to you about your careers, as in like how you guys got into telling stories. What inspired you? Was it always the documentaries, or it just kind of happened? Just tell me about your journey, both of you guys.
Curtis, you want to go first, or
Sure. Um, so I'm trying to synthesize this answer. Okay, so like I said, I grew up in Southern Africa, um, not around much of the entertainment world at all. Like relative to most of my colleagues and friends out here, like watched very few movies or shows or anything like that. But I was really into writing. I loved writing. Loved like the theater and that sort of stuff. So when I came to the US, I basically kind of like discovered the whole like the film industry and everything and got into it. And, I studied screenwriting in college. And so I came out to Los Angeles with the ambitions of being a writer. But during my college time, I had learned some basic editing stuff. And
Hmm.
essentially, after a few months of being out here and grinding and being rejected by all of the agents trying to get writing samples out to various places, ended up just at it's so cliche. I was down at like a Beverly Hills party and just started chatting somebody up. And they were like, at that point, I was just desperate for work. I was about to take a job working in a coffee shop. And was just chatting with somebody, and she was like, "Hey, do you happen to know Avid?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do actually." And she was like, "Do you need a job?" And I was like, "Yes." And she was like, "Do you want to start on Monday?" And I was like, "Yes." So I got a job just working, cutting like casting reels, so just like kind of internal things. And yeah, I just kind of just kept grinding, did casting for a while, got into development, and then eventually got a break as like a junior editor and just kind of kept working my way up and up. Um, and really like fell in love with, with documentaries, and specifically like sports documentaries. I think that the storytelling, like the structure that sports gives you in terms of like the storytelling is it's so great because it's like, you know, it gives you such a nice spine that you can like build these stories around. And so yeah, so it took me a few years to get into like the sports editing world, but I was able to get onto Last Chance U, that was on Netflix, and then did a few others, and then eventually Welcome to Wrexham, which led me to this. So yeah, it's a fascinating journey, to yeah, just like understanding, uncovering like the different sports and stuff. And it's also interesting like being able to work with sports that at least that I was not familiar with. So like Last Chance U is like American football. I knew nothing about American football coming from, Southern Africa.
Yeah.
And so like and I was the designated like game editor. So I was like responsible for cutting like the game footage. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't tell anybody that. I didn't tell anybody I don't know the sport. So it was a lot of like Googling, like, what does this mean? Blah, blah, blah. So it's like I've done things like that. I did a lacrosse feature doc, which I had never seen a game of lacrosse before I started working on that film. So it's really cool, like learning a sport as you're editing. It's like you
Yeah.
learn the sport pretty quick.
Yeah. And I think I'll get to Carlos in a second. One thing I'll make a comment about is that, sports documentaries, it really teaches you about life so much because whether you win a championship or not, it's just about the drama and also the disappointment and the frustration, like any emotion that you can imagine, from anger to friendship to camaraderie, like it just is in there. And the fact that you were in that world right now, from what I have been sort of talking to people in the industry, is like that's such a hot thing. Like there's so many sports series coming out now. And I think that that's a really good place to be in. So I just want to mention that. And Carlos, go ahead.
You got built-in stakes with the sports series. Yeah, similar to, well, not similar to Curtis at all. I didn't grow up in a different country and go that route. I fell in love with film. I'm an insomniac and have been ever since I was a little kid. And so I used to just fall asleep on the couch watching movies and sort of fell in love with them that way, which as I got older evolved into I want to do this for a living. I want to, like when I was in high school, Charlie Kaufman, that was that era of filmmaking with Spike Jonze and Michel Gondry and Jonathan Glazer, Chris Cunningham, all these exciting filmmakers who were doing very cool indie things um, that inspired me enough to go to film school. And I was lucky enough to graduate into the 2008 writers' strike and the recession. So uh, I've worked every bottom rung job you could have in the industry at this point, and was lucky enough that my buddy Andrew Hevia, who was one of the producers of Moonlight, this is back when we went to film school together.
I know
When
Moonlight,
times
yeah.
yeah, when times were tough, he offered me a job producing for PBS, like little segments for this art show that they had, and what I got paid was what was left over from the budget. And so if I didn't have to pay an editor and could just edit it myself, then that was like the budgets were minuscule. I wasn't making anything. So I was like, well, I'll just cut it myself. And then other producers liked the editing I was doing and then wanted me to edit their segments. And I realized I could sustain an easier career doing that at the time, and became an editor that way. Moved out here, had to start over again as like the midnight AE, the night shift AE, and logger transcriber on a lot of docs, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually worked my way back into documentary through reality television for 3 or 4 years when I first started out, and uh, now mostly feature docs and doc series for the last 7 or 8 years, and happy to be
That's
here.
that's great. And the reason I ask these questions from almost anyone I talk to about everybody's journey is that it's just like kind of going back to the sports. We were talking about people who we know as celebrities, and we don't never know their real life, like their true story in terms of outside of cameras. And in a similar way, not that we are in any kind of way celebrities like David Beckham or anything, but when people see yourself, Carlos or Curtis or anyone else, myself or anybody, at a certain level, not that we are at the top level, but a certain level, they forget that the journey that we had to make to get to where we are. Yes, there's some luck and everything, but it's a lot of hard work. And that's something that people don't realize, that it is like you guys said, like night shifts, quitting my job, going to work at a coffee shop or cafe, and getting it's a lot of hustle, and a lot of grinding, and a lot of tough days and years sometimes. So that I always think it's interesting to hear these kind of stories, because everybody has a different story. Everybody goes through struggle to be where they are, and it's a constant struggle going forward too. It's not that it ends. It's even for people like David Beckham or Messi or Ronaldo or anybody else. So people need to sort of understand that perspective, and sometimes I think people forget that.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was it was a tough journey. If I had to do it over again, I think
Yeah,
I might pick a STEM field or something to invest my
yeah,
time in. But yeah, 100% agreed. And of all the people that I graduated film school with, we all, I went to a school that, our classes were uh, 30 graduates per class. I think at last count, there's only like 7 of us or 8 of us that are still in the industry, just because it has been that much of a grind. And, some people, it didn't work out for them in the first year, 2, 3, you fall off. And I get it. But to your point, yeah, it's been a climb for just about everyone I know, where you've had
yeah,
to just put years and years and years into it to get anywhere.
It also helps
yeah.
not having any other marketable skills.
Yes,
It kind of
Yeah.
forces you like, well, this is my job. I have to make this work. So yeah. And it's true what you were saying, like, you can have like a moment of glory, but that doesn't guarantee that you're gonna get the next job. So it's like for the last, I don't know, 15 years that I've been doing this, it's like it's great when you're on a project, but then, you get 4 weeks out from when your wrap date is about to show up, and you kind of go into panic mode a little bit, and you're like, I don't know what the next thing is going to be. And it's like a constant hustle. And it's true, like through the entire entertainment industry, like actors deal with this constantly too, where
yeah,
it's like you still have to go on those auditions, you still have to do all of that.
And you
So
get
like
typecast.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, well
yes,
that was something like I had to really like fight against, because I at one point, started I did like a couple true crime shows, and I do not like true crime at all. But like I needed the job, so I did it. And so then like for a couple of years after that, every job offer I was getting or whatever, it was all true crime. And I had to hit a point where I'm like, I had to start telling people I don't do true crime. And it was scary.
yeah,
But even in sort of like taking that sort of that stance, there was a brief kind of dry period that I went through a little bit, but then like other things just kind of randomly started popping up, and I was like, all right, yeah, here we go. And that's what allowed me to get into the sports world.
I think it's so true what you said. The word not having skill sets in any other field, or called having a safety net. Not having a safety net is the best thing, and something that I have come to realize in the last 4 or 5 years. I think it kind of, you just through experience, you figure this out. As panicky or crazy as it would be, not knowing where is the next job going to come from, and it's easier said than done, and I do go into that mode, but at the same time, I'm in that place now, and I don't know how long it will last, where I love to be uncomfortable because that pushes me. It's just, when you become too comfortable and relaxed, and you're just like, hey, I have a job, another 6 months left. What's gonna happen? But I think being uncomfortable is something that it is scary. I'm not saying like I'm like, happy about it, but at the same time, it just pushes you. And I think that's sometimes necessary to be uncomfortable to be able to do what you want to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
and to that end, I also think, I thought once I'd reached a certain level in my career that like it would just be, you know, I wouldn't have to look for work anymore. I wouldn't have to do this. Like I would get offers or something naively, and you do, but it's like if you want to continue an upward path, like not only is the competition much more fierce for the top tier projects, but like those are fewer and farther between. So it actually gets even tougher the higher you climb. So it's this never ending thing of like, as you say, constantly having to like learn new skill sets, how to improve yourself, how to get better, how to make yourself a more, you know, a better artist, a better creator, a better storyteller, a better editor,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
higher you go so that you can separate yourself, and
Yeah. Yeah. So true, man. That's so true. Have you guys seen I'm sure you have the new OpenAI Sora stuff that's come out.
yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
it.
it's wild.
It is wild, and I was talking to my colleague who's my DP as well, and we were talking about AI like anybody else for the last few years, ever since especially ChatGPT came out. But when OpenAI's Sora came out, it's like we are not too far away from things changing completely upside down. Even Tyler Perry gave an interview in Hollywood Reporter last week. Like he was going to open up a new studio for like $800 million, and then he decided to hold back because of OpenAI's Sora. How do you think? I mean, that's more of like, text to generating footage, but at the same time, if that's become so easy, and this is the first iteration, do you feel that AI is going to play a huge role in the post-production world too? I mean, I think so, but I would love to know what you guys think.
I think it
I
already is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like my opinion is like, and a lot of my colleagues and stuff disagree with me, but like my feeling is the technology is coming. It's here to a degree, but it's coming. And we can choose to fight against it, or we can treat it just as a tool. It's like
Yes.
I'm sure that there were similar feelings when like post-production went digital. It's like they had been cutting on film and tape and all that sort of stuff, and then along comes these computers and editing software, and everybody's like, oh, this is going to ruin this whole industry. And like, no, it's just, if you can learn to just harness it, it just becomes another tool in your toolkit, is my feeling.
No, I agree with you, and I think it's the same thing. I remember, even though it's not the world of entertainment, I remember when the internet came out. I had an eBay account in 1997, and everybody I knew thought I was crazy putting my credit card online. Now go figure where we are, in 30 years,
Yeah.
or less than 30 years. And the same thing with, people putting their pictures online. It was like, are you
Hmm.
crazy? You're gonna put yourself online now and look at the world. So I think, yeah, I agree with you in that sense. I think the key would be, and I had this conversation with someone in the Silicon Valley last week. He sent me the link. He's like, well, what do you think is gonna happen? He's not nothing to do with entertainment industry. I'm like, I think the work is gonna become limited, but what's gonna make you stand out is not necessarily your skill set, but the relationships and the networking connection that you have with people. And I think that's gonna count more than anything else, because people will depend on other people and their connection with you, as opposed to maybe not as much as skill set. Maybe I am wrong, but I think that's gonna play a key role, is just having those connections and relationships with people, all the time, just hanging out with them and just making sure they know you and you know them.
Yeah, for sure. And like, look, at the end of the day, I think we're a long ways away from uh robots replacing human stories. Like I think that the stories are still um like that's still gonna be required to come from people. Partly because I think that the what makes stories interesting are the flaws. It's the mistakes, and it's the,
Mm.
even when you look at movies or whatever, like if you were to I feel like if you were to see a perfect movie, it probably would not be that interesting, ironically, because you want those imperfections in it. And so yeah, so that's where I think that, like, we're a long ways away from AI truly like taking over and having the level of consciousness, because it's meant to be efficient. Like AI is the purpose of it is to make life, to make everything, whatever it's programmed to do, as efficient as possible. And it's our human tendency to lack efficiency, I think, that creates
Agreed. How about you, Carlos?
I agree. Similarly, I think, AI is coming whether we want it to or not. I think we should, to, what other creatives in the industry have been saying, try and put some guardrails in place just so that, it's doesn't just,
Yeah, I think that's the key.
scorch earth
Yeah.
on everybody, and that we're using this in an ethical way. But I do think it's going to be a situation where you either get with the times or get left behind, because like, these are tools that people are going to
Yeah.
assume that you're going to be using, and so you have an obligation to know your enemy. I don't see it as an enemy, like they're supposed to be
Yeah, yeah.
tools in a sense, but I think the big fear is that you're going to get replaced, that like someone is just going to, like, if we work in documentaries, someone's just going to feed all this material to an algorithm, and it's going to go and like spit out a feature length film, which I don't think we're anywhere close, to that being a possibility. But on the flip side of that, I think a big part of the job of being an editor is interpreting the feedback that you get from, network execs, from your director, from showrunners, from the production company you work for, from the streaming giant, and sometimes what they ask for isn't what they want. And my job as an editor a lot of the time is interpreting what your feedback you're giving me and saying, no, 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 oh, what you actually want is this thing. So trying to if you're someone who's just telling an AI spit me out this, and you're
Yeah.
not understanding why you're not getting what it is that works so wonderful in your mind, I mean, it's because like the AI is just doing what you're telling it to, as opposed to thinking collaboratively and reinterpreting what you're saying. um
Yeah, and to add to that, I think what I would tell you is that I was listening to this podcast. I forget what it was, but it was these bunch of guys who had access to OpenAI's Sora, and they were doing some tests. And these guys are like, they interview like people like Sam Altman, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, and what they did was they asked AI to create something, and it created it, and it was almost perfect. Like, let's say I think it was like 3-minute video or something, and and they wanted something tweaked. So they asked it to tweak it. Instead of tweaking it, it threw out something brand new. So that element of editing that you're talking about was not there. It just went from scratch, and what they got in the result was not as good as the first output. So unless you figure it out and you're on your own how to edit it, but yeah, that's where it at. But I think one thing is for sure. I remember last year transcribing jobs went away because now you can just have anything transcribed. And with this OpenAI Sora, I think stock footage industry is going to get hurt a lot. But yeah, I do think we're not that close to being replaced by robots, but as a tool, if we can regulate it and we can, create some sort of guardrails, then I think we should be okay, more or less.
And that's why I also think that it's important for anybody specifically in this industry, but I think it's true of all industries that like you know, you should constantly be trying to push yourself to try new things, to like even, you know, pivot your experience and, you know, like get new experience, get new like work in areas that, you know, might be new to you or whatever. Like I'm trying to do that right now. Since this Messi thing, you know, I've been trying to like get more into producing, um, you know, which I don't have much or hardly any experience with. But you know, for me, it's like I'm expanding my tool belt, and um, I think that like in the long run, like that's what I've tried to do throughout my career is like, well, I don't have experience doing this one thing, but you try it, you get into it, and then you have that experience, and you kind of just keep
Exactly.
pushing and pushing. So, yeah, I mean, again, I think that if your concern is that you're going to lose your job to AI, then I think it's good to recognize that, and then you know just try to pivot a little bit.
I think that's the key. Having not, eggs in one basket, like you need to sort of scatter it around and just to make sure that you are ready to pivot. And I think that's important for your own growth too. If you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to run out of ideas and you're going to become complacent. So it's important to do that. Maybe it will be good for humanity, in some ways. But in any ways, what's next for you guys as we sort of wrap up? Both of you guys can sort of talk about what's coming up that you are able to talk about.
I just finished directing a pilot with my friend Andrew Hevia, who's the head of film and production for Papa Lorraine's company, Fabula, and the one I was saying,
Yep.
one of the producers on Moonlight, um, that we're hoping to take to market at some point this year, although there's a backlog of everything and no one's taking meetings at the moment, so we'll see how that goes. And then I'm currently working on another pilot for Boardwalk Pictures of Last Chance U and Cheer fame, that I would be surprised if does not get picked up somewhere. It's just one of those projects that checks all the boxes, and I'm very excited to be working on it at the moment. And that's what I got. I can't
That sounds
talk too much
awesome,
about
man.
the details
No,
about
no,
them,
it's of
but
course,
they're
that's fine. Yeah, yeah.
fun
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm like I said at the top, really working on this soccer documentary um about the refugees in
Yes.
Kansas City, which we're super excited about. Got some exciting meetings lined up for that. And what else? I'm working at Endeavor right now, which is like the giant company that have WME. So I'm working with them developing some shows and um, you know, editing over there as well. And then also working with Kennedy Marshall Company, which is, you know, Frank Marshall
Yep.
and Kathy Kennedy. Project I can't really talk about right now, but got a great relationship over there with them. So we are developing a project with them as well.
That's great. I think they're into the world of documentaries, right? Kennedy Marshall. I think they do
Yeah,
docs.
last year I actually I worked with Frank on a documentary about Dan Rather, the journalist, that he directed, and I was editing with him, and man, it was such a cool experience. Like Frank, you know, he's Hollywood royalty.
Oh yeah.
And so like just being able to sit with him in a bay and like, you know, go through the film that we did together, and then, you know, going up with him to like the Skywalker Ranch to, you know, mix this like little documentary that we did. It was such a great experience. Learned so much from that guy. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've all grown up on Marshall, Kennedy, and Spielberg films, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
Amblin and then obviously they went their own ways. But yeah, no, this is great, man. Thank you so much, guys, for talking about the series, Messi's Apple TV Plus series on the World Cup, as well as your projects and a little bit of a divergence on AI and everything. It's been a pleasure having you, and thank you for sharing all your valuable information and your career paths and the work that you did on the series.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Good
Yeah,
chat
thank you
with
very much. It's been fun.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment, and do come back for another episode. Until then, have a great day.